Welcome back to another Random Ramblings episode. This is going to be episode 2. This series of videos could be similar to Gary and Mendham's WTF series, but it won't be anywhere near as long. I'm not going to make 1,000 episodes of Random Ramblings. I'm just going to make them as long as people actually care about what I have to say. And, I had stuff on my mind when I first made the decision to record an episode 2, and unfortunately, by the time I even got Audacity to open on my computer and even started recording, my mind had already wandered off to something else. Isn't that just unfortunate how the human brain works sometimes? It can be a wonderful tool when you need it, but sometimes when you need it, it can fail you. And in a way, it kind of failed me today. The human brain can fail just as easily as any other organ. Which I suppose is why there could be, in some cases, a benefit to taking medication to at least assist the brain in producing the right chemicals to make you feel a little better. But I just remembered what it was that I had wanted to talk about in the first place. And what I wanted to talk about was permanent solutions to all problems. That is what I had wanted to talk about when I originally made the decision to record Random Ramblings episode 2. But unfortunately, my mind had wandered off to vastly different areas, and here I am, just now remembering what I wanted to talk about. And even now, I'm at the potential of forgetting about it, just because I'm tired. And I drank a nice strong beer, and had a couple of gummies, so I feel pretty good. But at the end of the day, I want a permanent solution to all problems. And not just accepting band-aid fixes that help in the temporary short term, but don't really solve long-term mental or physical health problems, if you know what I mean. Regardless of what may or may not have caused them to exist in a person's mind or body. What is wrong with wanting a permanent solution? Especially a permanent solution that could solve everything. And if that happened to be exiting life, then I suppose I can see the appeal in wanting to do that. But here's the thing. Exiting this life does not necessarily guarantee that I will be at peace. Because there is always that possibility that an evil god or demiurge is out there. And on the day where I stand defiant before them, I don't know how they're going to react. My suffering could go on far beyond this life, regardless of whether I self-exit or not. I could just wait around for the natural death to come for me, and, I imagine the result would be the same, regardless of whether or not I had sped up the process and done it myself earlier. I think the result would be the same regardless, if an evil God existed. It takes a lot of courage to stand up to a God, if you really think about it. Imagine being a bacteria, looking up at an elephant and flipping it off with both middle fingers. That's pretty much what standing up to a God is going to be like. You have to imagine the amount of courage someone like that's got to take. And to know that such a possibility is even there, well, that's enough to make a person hesitate when it comes to making the decision to self-exit or not. Things like that should at least make a person hesitate. And at least be mentally prepared for the possibility. And like I've said in previous videos, when it comes to a proper rebellion, well, actually in the last Random Ramblings video, what I said is that when it comes to a proper rebellion, sometimes you have to be prepared for the possibility of being crucified by the state. And when it comes to the case of standing up to God, He is the state in this case. You're standing up to God, and you have to be prepared for the possibility of anything He could possibly do to you. I have to be prepared for the possibility of anything He could do to me. I am convinced fully that the creator of our world is malevolent. I am fully convinced of this. But the question is, am I really ready to stand up to them? Because at the end of the day, just like it was on a certain TV show that I like, God is the enemy here. Now, I'm not saying that the Satan character from the Bible is automatically the good guy here either. Because if you remember from the book of Job, Satan was able to come and go from heaven as he pleased. And he and God literally ganged up on Job in that story. That is what happened in the book of Job. So let's not pretend that the Satan character is suddenly the good guy. He's at least, we'll say, less of a monster. But could be the fact that he just hasn't had the chance to be as monstrous as God yet. Some people would say that by me calling God evil, I am slandering Him. Well, that is their opinion, but that is only their opinion, because I do not see it that way. I see my opinions of God as actually more than opinions. I see them as factual. I think that God is a sadist. I think that is factual. I think it's possible He is a mere demiurge. But if I were to honestly believe what the religious people have to say about how God loves me and all that. Well, if God loves me, then why doesn't he offer me the option to simply not exist? Maybe his idea of heaven and his idea of hell are both equally repulsive to me, and I want nothing to do with either one. Maybe I just don't want to exist anymore. And maybe I just want to have a grand finale for myself where I enjoy my favorite addictions for a little while, and then just one day out of the blue just be like, oh, I've had enough. You know? And like people have said to me in the past, you know, if I really wanted to die, it wouldn't be hard to make it happen. But I would prefer the peaceful option if it were available to me. You know, something that's not gory, something, you know, something that I can get at the pharmacy. As easily as I can get cigarettes at a gas station. That's what I think the peaceful pill should be. The peaceful way out. That's what it should be. At the pharmacy. But it should be as easy as getting cigarettes at a gas station. Or alcohol at a gas station. Either one. And I want that to be available for everybody. Not just for me, but for all people. That is what I genuinely want. A fully legalized, peaceful way out that people can access anytime they want to. That way, the people who want to live can continue living on as they always have, and the people who don't can take the peaceful way out, and that'll be the end of it, you know. People could just decide for themselves, and that's the way it should be. And it shouldn't matter if God exists or not. If God would stand in the way of one's will to not exist, then he is a mere prison warden and nothing more. Existence, in that case, for people who don't want it, is a prison sentence. And if God is against their will to not exist, he is the prison warden. Why would I ever want to bow down to a prison warden? That makes no sense to me. Just like Autisticus Spasticus said when he was talking to Danny Shine about God, I will stand defiant before the tyrant. That will be my final act of rebellion right there. I can't say what day that will happen, but when I do meet God, I will reject him to his face. And some people may say I have already done that, just by making this recording. But so what? I want to see the actual reaction and hear the rage, you know. And I wish I had a God-killing sword that I could use against him. Just to bring him down, once and for all. Let God experience mortality for a change. And some religious people would say that he's already experienced mortality. They would say that he came to earth as Jesus and that he experienced death that way. But is that really how it happened? You know, this Jesus guy could have just been a sock puppet that God was controlling, just manipulating him and making him do stuff. had him nailed to a cross, manipulated the Romans into doing it, and just so he could enjoy the bloodshed. How do we know that wasn't the whole point of it? Anyways, we don't know that that wasn't the point of it. We don't know what God's actual intentions are. If he's out there, he doesn't. To the majority of us, he doesn't talk to us. He has certainly never spoken to me in any way. You know, there have been times in the past when I was religious where I thought I felt his presence, but at the end of the day, I think what I was feeling was the energy of the people around me being siphoned out of them by whatever archonic forces run this world. I think that's what I was feeling, even if I didn't recognize it as such at the time when I was still religious. I was feeling the energy of the people around me, not the presence of God like I had thought. At least that is what I think it was now. But people just don't understand the amount of courage it would have to take to stand up to God. Or the demiurge, or whatever it is that created this world. Whatever it is, to stand up to it takes a lot of courage. Am I really ready for that? I don't know. That is a question I ask myself all the time. Am I really ready to do that? Am I really ready to just drop everything and just go meet the dictator in the clouds and tell him off like I really want to? You know, is that what I should do? That's what I want to do sometimes. But again, that takes a lot of courage to just do that. And of course, if somebody out there is an atheist that also believes in the right to die, they would say, well, if you just end your life, you won't exist anymore. It's as simple as that. There is no God. Or there probably is no God, is what they might say. They would say they don't believe in a God, so they would say there was no evidence of one that convinced them. That is what an atheist would say, that they were not convinced that there was a God. So they would tell you, if they believed in the right to die, they would tell you that you would simply not exist anymore. And while that would be the ideal state, coming from somebody who is, in my case, not an atheist, it's a little different. It's a little different for me, knowing what I may potentially have to do. You know, to really meet the enemy face to face. In open rebellion, as I stand up to God. Am I really ready for that? I ask myself that question all the time. And I'm asking myself that question right now. Even as I speak of it, I am asking, am I really ready? Well, the question is, I still have my addictions that are keeping me here, and I don't know that I'm really ready to stand up to God just yet. But I know the time will come when the opportunity will arise. And I think it will arise on its own naturally at some point. You know, for me, it could be an illness or a natural disaster. It could be anything. It could be an accident, you know. I'm prepared for it. If I die in an accident and it's somebody else's fault, I forgive whoever that person was right from the start. Before I even have ever been in the accident, I forgive them. Because the way I see it, accidents are like a force of nature. Really. They just happen. And sometimes people get sucked into them. Just like in natural disasters. So, if I die in an accident and it's my fault, well, so be it, I suppose. That's always a possibility as well. And while I would hope that I don't cause an accident at all when it comes to driving a car, for sure, while I don't want to cause an accident driving a car, if I was ever in one and someone else was at fault, I can at least say I forgive them right from the beginning. And I would only hope that they would know that. Whew, but I've rambled on for quite a long time here. I did kind of lose my train of thought a little bit. Thanks to the strong beer and the gummies that I had, so having a nice buzz, while it can help sometimes in getting my words out there, it can also result in me losing my train of thought easily. So I have to be very careful sometimes in not losing my train of thought. But I don't want Band-Aid fixes. I want a permanent solution to all problems. And whatever that happens to be, I hope I can discover it for myself, because it would be nice to just not have any problems ever again. Whether it's an old bank that I used to go to trying to garnish me, or student loans, or whatever it is. I don't want, I want a permanent solution to that stuff. And while some people could say, oh, just pay it off, well, I don't want to. And while I have, unfortunately, paid quite a lot into it already, I just don't want to do it anymore. I don't see why I should. They should understand that I was struggling for a little while, and they should forgive the debt. I think. That is what they should do. And I also do not think that corporations should be able to sue individual people like they can. They should not be able to do that. Stuff like that can really run a person into the ground. Literally. And while that hasn't happened to me just yet, I can honestly say that there have been people out there who, because of financial stress, have self-exited from this life. And that could easily be me at any point in time. While I have no plans of doing any such thing, it just could be maybe in a year from now. I just changed my mind and was like, oh, I'm out of here. I don't know. I can't predict the future. But what I can do is in the here and now, I can honestly say that I think people that are in my situation, people who resent the fact that they were created, who do not have any recollection of consenting to this before they were literally born kicking and screaming. I don't remember if I was a soul that existed before then. I have no idea. But what I do know is I do not want to be in the world now. I don't feel like I belong here. And despite other people's attempts at making me feel welcome, the problem is that I just hate the way the world is. I hate nature. I hate politics, regardless of the country, regardless of the continent. I hate that stuff. Although when I play Total War games, suddenly that stuff is interesting, but in real life it's just depressing. I don't know. Why do I like to play Total War games? I don't really know. I can't honestly say that I really understand that. But I do know that they are fun for me. Especially when I can pretend that my priests are euthanasia doctors. That's pretty fun right there. And I do have another video recorded for Medieval 2 Kevorkian Edition. I just have not edited the video yet because my computer has a difficult time when the video editor processes recorded video game clips. My computer has a difficult time with that. And while I definitely enjoy making these Medieval 2 Kevorkian editions, videos, while I definitely enjoyed making them, and while I definitely enjoyed recording the one that I have yet to upload still, the editing process is not as enjoyable as recording it, I will say. Or playing the game, even. So perhaps what I think people should do is, if they are, for whatever reason, interested in playing a game like Medieval 2 Total War, or any kind of strategy game that's similar to it, where they can pretend that certain members of their factions are euthanasia doctors if they want to. If somebody wants to do that, they should be able to have an enjoyable campaign, we'll say. Because I have had many interesting campaigns playing as Scotland in Medieval 2 over and over again. Each campaign was different from the last. They really were. The only similarities were that the priests were euthanasia doctors. That was the only similarity. And the fact that I went on crusades. But the people that went on crusades were always different. There were crusades that failed and crusades that succeeded. Depending on the campaign, it was very interesting. Medieval 2 is an interesting game, I will say, regardless of which faction you play as. And I have played as quite a few different factions in that game. So, I've experienced playing as the Holy Roman Empire. I've played as Spain and France and England. I've played as those guys in Medieval 2. I truly have. And those were interesting campaigns too. And at one point in one of my campaigns where I was playing as England, I had a king named King Nigel the Scarred. And that was a guy who his cavalry unit charged into battle a lot. You know, and he took a lot of hits to the point where it was amazing that the enemy general fell. And somehow this king became King Nigel the Scarred, all because he survived a close victory. So, yeah. That was an interesting campaign playing as England right there. And I believe I was fighting against France in that campaign. I do believe I was fighting against France at that time. But that's just in the video game, so that's where my mind has wandered off to. And I have been recording this for quite a while, and I think I'm going to end this here. So if anybody cares enough to listen to what I have to say in this random ramblings episode 2, I suppose go ahead and like the video if you like what you hear. If you care enough to listen. Maybe even leave a comment if you would like to. Let me know if you want me to include video game footage of Motocross Madness, or if I should leave it out. You know, I'm genuinely curious about that. What do people think about that? I know my opinions be what really matters, but when it comes to that, but I'm genuinely curious to know what other people think. Anyway, this has been Random Ramblings episode 2, and I'm going to end this here, I think.